For this final session of our webinar master plan, we're going to look at what can happen when the master plan's completed and you're faced with the necessity to integrate the individual projects that have been assigned to different project teams. Many of them will be using other CAD systems than MicroGDS. So we'll start by opening up a simplified version of our master plan from the industrial development we just looked at. And basically we stripped this down so that we've just got the site elements in the view. The actual master plan components themselves have been erased so that the real building information that's actually produced for the projects can be inserted instead. Now if we just have a quick look at what we can do with the data, which is likely to be supplied either as DWG or DXF files, we can open those in MicroGDS, and if we just select DWG, we've got our phase 1 drawing here. Just open that, just accept the default options for now. That opens up a copy of the phase 1 plan here that's been produced by whichever team of consultants, and we can now save that as a MAN file, MicroGDS format, and we could replace the one that I've already done here, in fact, just by clicking save, but we won't do that. We won't overwrite the data that I've already got there. Click on cancel and we'll just close that back down again. No changes. And if we look at the layers that we've got set up here, we can see with the window editor that what we've created here is a view that's got a separate layer for each individual phase within the project. So what we'll do is we look and we see we've got the first two phases are already populated. Those are the site plans. We'll double click to select our phase 1 layer and we'll open up our phase 1 drawing. And you'll notice that what we've got in all of these drawings are these registration symbols here, which I've used as my common points to make sure that each of the different portions of the project, each phase, is registered in its correct position. You could use anything that is known as a common position between the different projects. You could use the Ordnance Survey grid or another mapping grid, or you could do survey base stations, anything that you know is a common position. Even the world origin, if the same origin has been used in all of the drawings. I've found it simpler to produce these registration marks because I've discovered that there are some older versions of CAD systems that can actually shift the information around on different layers if their extents are quite large, as they would be with many master plans. So to overcome that, I make sure that these registration marks are placed on every layer in all of the projects that I work on master plans. So what we'll do is we will take a snapshot, a photograph of that particular view, and if we just snap onto the point where the registration marks cross here, switch back to our master plan view and snap onto the same position in the registration mark there, and that superimposes a linked view from that original file. It doesn't copy the data from the file at all. This is just an external reference via this thing called the photo to that file. So we do the same again for our phase 2. Make that the current layer, open our phase 2 drawing, and you'll notice it's actually saying phase 2 and 3. That's because in real life this project, phase 2, merged seamlessly into the next phase. They were actually completed in effect as one continuous contract because the decision to go ahead with phase 3 was taken before phase 2 was completed. So I'll just do the same process again, snap on that position with the camera, switch to our master plan, drop that into place there, and you'll see that everything just slots nicely into its proper position. So now we go to phase 4. Remember, phase 3 was included in this this view here, so we don't need to do that separately. Open our phase 4 drawing again, and I'm just zooming to the extent so that the snapshot I'm taking here is exactly the extent that we need for the finished drawing. Click on the position there, that drops that one in there. And phase 5. Open phase 5 up. Again zoom, snap drop that into position, and finally the research and development building. Open that up again, point, window, and drop that in position there. Okay, and we can now save our man file to fix those changes. The pink shaded area here just shows you that that's the extent of the snapshot that we've derived from the other drawing. If we deselect everything, you'll see that the actual background is just plain exactly as you would expect it. And if we zoom in, we can see the drawings in all their detail. I can move across the drawing, and again it's exactly the same information that we were looking at earlier in the overall master plan. What we can do also is we can now control the visibility of these individual projects. So if we want to turn off Phase 5, for example, we just make that invisible with a single click on one layer and the whole thing's gone. But also, if we want, we can manage the layers within this particular drawing from this panel over here. So each of these photos, as they're called, has got its own set of layer controls. So if I just zoom in onto the Phase 5 area here, with the photo for that phase selected, we can see that we've got control of those layers from the external file. And this is independently of how they're set up in the file itself, so what we do has no effect on that file. But we can choose to modify the status of the layers here. So for example, we could, I don't know, quite simply we could change the colours for these phases here. So let's make them all a nice bright blue, for example. Or we could control the visibility. We just scroll across here, let me see, we've got some trucks there. Let's turn the trucks off, so where would they be? They would be on the symbols layer, so a transportation layer perhaps, make them invisible. And they are on the symbols layer. Click on OK. Ah, yes, I have to go away and close the dialog down. If we look at the original file, so if we open our file, our Phase 5 file here, we can see that we've not made any alterations to the way that the original file is displayed at all. So we're not manipulating the data that was supplied to us by the other consultant. That's sacrosanct, it's untouched, but we can manipulate that within our master plan to suit our own requirements for presentation and whatever. The next thing to look at, of course, is what happens when the plan changes. What happens when there's a new version of this project released.